بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا المحمود الأحمد المصطفى الأمجد أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode on Alwasi TV. And today we have a special guest, brother Abdul Saad, who is a clinical psychologist and a transformational coach. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Karrar. Such a pleasure to be with you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming. As you know, it's a podcast. It's open season. It's open discussion.
Inshallah.
So, first of all, we'd like to talk a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about you, how it came to be Brother Abdul in 2025.
Well, I guess it starts with your mum and dad, right? For most of
Absolutely.
us. We hope. Maybe these
That's
days
right.
there's a different way. Alhamdulillah. My parents come from southern Lebanon, Jabal Amil, a village called Bint Jbail, which is obviously very well known. And my father emigrated in 1950 to Argentina and then Venezuela, lived there for 40 years. With my mother, and I was born in Venezuela.
MashaAllah.
The youngest of four siblings. I have an older brother and two older sisters. And then in 1987, at the age of 3, we came to Australia. And then I was pretty much raised here, educated here, did my psychology studies here. And as I say, the rest is history.
Rest is history.
The rest is history,
Yeah.
Doc. Yes.
We'll talk about your life in psychology, but
Yes.
when was the first time you thought that was it? That was what you were going to do?
Well, there was actually a distinct moment. I was 16 at a second-hand book fair. And I picked up a introductory psychology textbook from 1982. And I flipped through it and I instantly fell in love. Because I found that psychology for me was the perfect mix of the sciences and the humanities. You learn about the brain and the nervous system and the scientific method, but also there was the philosophy, the humanities, and understanding the human condition and all these theories. So for me, it was the perfect mix where I didn't have to choose between either the hard sciences or the softer humanities. It was a nice mix of both.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful. And you as a younger self,
Yes.
being 16, how did you then take on that decision to kind of make it on as a
Yes.
an older kind of teenager?
Well, I guess at that point I thought, if I'm going to become a psychologist, I better get some good grades. So
Better get a move on.
you got to lock yourself into that room and sit down, and so that motivated me to study. And I did reasonably well. Back then it was the UAI.
That's
Is
right.
it the ATAR now?
Yeah, the
ATAR.
UAI went up until 100,
Yes.
but
yes.
the ATAR now goes up to 99.95.
Does it? Okay.
So you won't get the satisfaction of
Right. So look, I did pretty good for a Lebanese kid from the southwest of Sydney. I got 88.90. So that wasn't too bad. So I didn't quite make it into the Bachelor of Psychology program at UNSW.
Was that the
That was
only or the
no.
best?
There was another pathway. So I got into Bachelor of Advanced Science at New South. The ATAR the UAI was 85, but with that you had to get a distinction point average throughout to get into honours. And pretty much with psychology, if you don't get into honours, the degree is a waste of time. So it's a bit of a gamble, right?
Yeah.
You get to third year, so alhamdulillah, we made it into honours. we got in, and by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's tawfiq, to do the clinical masters at UNSW, you've got to get a first class honours.
Oh, that's tough.
That's tough. So I got a class 2 division 1. I
Whoa.
missed out on first class by 1 mark. I got 84. And you do what you do, you make your dua, you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his guidance and help. And I had some contingencies with other unis, but my heart was set on New South.
Well, you read a Fatiha
You
to
read-
al-Banin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Alayhi salam.
Salamullahi
Alayhi salam.
alayha.
Salamu
Well,
alayha.
we are living the days of her demise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that was a nerve-wracking way, but by Allah's tawfiq, I got in on the waiting list. So I was on the standby, made it into the clinical program, and that was I finished up in 2007. And then pretty much at the age of 24, 2008, I landed my first role at Cumberland Hospital in the psychiatric unit, right in the deep end.
So you were a clinical psychologist then,
clinical psych,
and you had just started,
just newly minted, and working in psychiatric wards with very severe disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar personality disorders, the forensic unit, people that had committed horrific crimes. I got to see, electroconvulsive therapy, all sorts of things. So I started in the real deep end in the psychiatric settings. And then, worked at various hospitals, Prince of Wales Hospital, Bankstown, Cumberland, and then sort of made way into private practice. And we've ended up here in, I guess now you could say I'm a mix of conventional psychology, but also the transformational coaching is more the psychospiritual perspective that I bring to my work. So.
And during the times when you were in the deep end,
yes,
what was your thought process about, did you have any regrets? What do I get myself into? Is this the moment where I'm saying, I'm switching roads? Or did you find it a path to catapult towards something else?
Well, the regret actually was with my very first patient at university, placement at the clinic. It was a rather depressed middle-aged man, and I thought, how will I help this person? Well, I've wasted 6 years of my life. I have no idea how to help this person. So it was a moment of panic. And as you'd probably know as a doctor, the imposter syndrome when you first start, right, as a rookie.
Absolutely.
You think, what do I know? They call me doctor, or they think I'm this person, or psychologist, but I don't think I know anything.
Absolutely.
But alhamdulillah, after I find, and I say this to most professionals, after you have your first 5 years under your belt, you've developed a basic level of competencies and masteries. And then if you stick with it and you pursue excellence and have the right mentors, it takes after itself. You develop your pattern recognition, your skill set. And above all, we are in these professions, whether medicine or psychology or social work. They're called the helping and healing arts, really. I don't see myself as a technician doling out sessions. I like to see myself, and it's a taboo word, but as a healer. Ultimately, I'm sure you see yourself as that. Ultimately, we're here to heal, and heal doesn't mean to cure, like I'm going to heal someone's cancer if you as a doctor. But the aim is to make the person whole, to help them to integrate, so they're not living as a house divided against themselves.
And that's a beautiful way of putting it together, because as when you're in the profession, when you're in the health profession, it's all about fixing. It's like something broken, I have to put it back together.
Yeah.
There's a wound, I have to stitch it back together.
Exactly.
When it comes to mental health, it's much more than that.
Yeah, it really is.
You were in the deep end for a while.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
And how did you find the transition away from the deep end towards more of what you do now? The non-conventional medical stuff.
Yeah, well, the transition was because I saw the limits of the conventional model, which is either, drugs, which have their place. I was probably more anti-psychiatric medicine in my earlier career.
And psychologists and psychiatrists, for that matter, were at some point categorized as either biological or psychotherapy driven psychiatrists. So even within the profession, you find that there is actually the two major schools of thoughts. So you weren't on your own there.
I wasn't an outlier. Well, actually, psychiatry initially was psychodynamic. It was Freudian. So psychiatrists were Freudian therapists. But it's only in recent decades that they've become purely biological, where it's all about psychotropic medication. So I I saw the limits of that and how the whole revolving door syndrome with very acute conditions and psychotic disorders and patients on clozapine that would gain 70 kilograms and would be drooling all night, and the nurses would have to change their pillowcases. So it was very, very distressing, and then working in private practice. But eventually I started to integrate nutritional perspectives using micronutrient supplements. I trained in hair mineral analysis. So I started to want to bridge the gap between pure talk therapy and psychotropic medication and use lifestyle and nutritional interventions. And then through my own journey, then integrating, I'd say, advanced systems of personality, or you could call it depth psychology, going beyond conventional psych. And that led me into more the transformational coaching space, where you work with individuals that you could say are higher functioning, higher performing. So you're not really ameliorating or managing symptoms. They're already performing at a pretty good level, but they want to go to another level, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally. And that's more the coaching space that I work with. Yes.
And that sounds very nice.
Right.
How successful have you been in doing that?
Well, it's a success.
How do you measure?
How do I measure?
How do you measure your level of success?
Well, I guess one way is if your clients keep coming back, right? If you get repeat business. Not that I see it as a business, but really I'm very blessed in that my clients, probably like yourself, a good GP, they become like family. And if people keep coming back and then they referring their spouses and the mother-in-law and the father-in-law and the grandma and the nephew, and you're probably doing something right. But I don't see it as how successful I am. And I know how you use that word, because success has its dichotomy, which is failure. I see myself as a person on a mission. And when you're on a mission, there's going to be success and failure, and you have to take both, because you've got a singular focus on helping people, meeting them where they're at, and honoring their story. A lot of what I do is listen to people and tell them it's understandable you're feeling how you're feeling. That's usually the starting point, not, well, this is your diagnosis.
Yeah, acknowledging what you have is the first
Acknowledging,
step.
can put it into context. Some people have been through some horrific things. And you say, well, what chance did you have? No wonder you're having these feelings. So I've always sought not to lose my basic humanity. And I guess when I was a younger clinical psych, you do have a more narcissistic element of, here I am, I know the DSM and I can give the diagnosis and I can do the formulation, but you go beyond that. That's very much egoic in our early training. And you say, really, if I can't listen to this human and walk with them and assist them to make sense of whatever's happening, if I just give them a diagnosis, how really have I helped them? Right. Yeah.
It sounds like you think very deeply about each of your clients.
Yes.
And you care very much about their individual sense and
yes,
their
their
individual
well-being.
being. What do you see the role of psychology in general now
Yeah.
in our community, in the Muslim community?
In the Muslim community? It has many roles. If we start off with a higher order perspective of psychology, psychology is a bridge to spirituality, rather than it's something that you engage in if you've got some sort of symptoms or, let's say, an illness. The way I, as Abdul Saad, see psychology, it's the bridge to spirituality. What do I mean by that? What blocks our spiritual development often is our psychology, our personality, defense mechanisms, various neuroses and complexes, fears, fantasies and phobias. Well, that's all part of psychology. And if we don't deal with those things at some point in our journey as adults, we can engage in something called spiritual bypass, where we say, well, let's skip the psychology, let's skip all the yucky stuff about me, and let's just jump straight to spirituality. And what people often find is they can do that and they're not getting the results they want, because there's this bypass that's happened. You actually have to work on the nafs. So I see it as psychology is intimately linked with spirituality, and that's why my approach is psycho-spiritual.
Beautiful.
But that's my perspective. That's not a common perspective that would be shared.
Beautiful. And so what do you see as some of the barriers then of some people may not be seeking the help that they need in the community, at least from your experience, either before or after the turning point?
There's a few barriers. One are structural. So it could be financial barriers. It could be lack of access to psychologists that are perhaps Muslim or come from your particular faith tradition or have an understanding. So there are barriers, structural barriers. The other ones would be truly finding someone that you actually connect with and that, how can I put this, is operating at a level of awareness sufficient to actually assist you. Because I guess the sort of dirty secret in psychology is it's hard to improve if your therapist is at a lower level of awareness than you, which can sometimes be the case. With some of my clients that I work with that are highly empathetic, and maybe they're struggling with depression or anxiety, but they often don't get anywhere with the therapist they're seeing because they're actually at a higher level of awareness in some level than the therapist. So there can be structural barriers, there can be psychological barriers in terms of the level of awareness of the therapist, their level of empathy. And psychology and therapy, it's something incredibly subjective. You either click with the person or you don't, right? The other barriers would be lack of awareness of the potential profound benefits of psychology and coaching with the right person. And often people get burnt because they have one session with someone. It's, in common parlance, it's a flop.
Well, in fact, it happens more often than we think.
Yeah, and the person says, I tried it, it was a complete disaster. I just, and actually that's a common thing my clients say. I talked to someone for 4 or 5 sessions, we were just chatting, and it didn't really get anywhere. So there's many variables that can collude against people getting help. Yeah,
and interestingly, you mentioned some pointers, and I've practically had experience with each and every one of them.
Yes.
And it depends on the age group. I get lots of patients in different age groups talking about finding the right person who is culturally aware.
Yes.
Who is of a similar race to them, who understands some of the very specific cultural taboos in that community, whether it's a particular religious taboo or whether it's a very close, knitted community where you can only do a series of events and series of things. Otherwise, it gets seen as some sort of major defect in your personality. Yeah,
they can be shamed or judged.
They could be shamed or judged.
Yes.
Or that it's just seen as quite weak that you seek help as a young person. And I see that quite a lot of the millennials, and there's quite a big move actually from quite a lot of therapists out there to target that age group as well. Yes. Because it's an age group that is very well aware of the surroundings, very well aware of its diagnosis. We have quite a lot of information at our fingertips now.
Exactly.
They get access to diagnoses. They put down their list of symptoms and they can get whatever, comes out on the other end.
Yes.
But really, then they don't know what to do with it. Yes, I've got this, but how do I actually manage it? Like, who do I need to talk to? Is there somebody who can talk to me who is a little bit outside of the traditional, conventional, you get this many sessions to see this person. After 10 of them, you get a report and that's it.
That's it.
Well, it's never ending. Just like any other, chronic disease. If you're a diabetic, you don't just have a medication for 6 months and stop.
Yes.
It's something you live with, and doesn't mean it's a negative problem. It has no negative connotation on you. And like you said, the point you made about high-functioning people wanting to become better.
Yes.
That in itself, it means that there's nothing wrong. There's no diagnostically, there's nothing wrong with them.
There's no pathology.
There's no pathology. There's no reason for them to see somebody. But it's part of their personal development. You
Yes.
also mentioned personality. I want to explore
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Tell me about your view of personality. What is a personality to you?
Well, personality is, there's so many ways we could define it, but essentially it's the mental construct or the self-image we have, which we mistake to be our true self. So personality, the English term comes from the Latin term persona, which means mask. So your personality is the mask you wear, and it's a mental construct based on your temperament, certain genetic factors in your upbringing and your parenting and what happened to you in school, and you develop a mental construct, literally a construct in your mind of who you think you are, an idealized image that you mistake to be your true self, or what we would call in depth psychology, essential self. So your personality is a defensive structure, mental structure, that is a facsimile or a copy of who you truly are. So a lot of what I do is, we work with the depression or the anxiety, but ultimately we get to the personality, this persona, this shell. And if the person's willing to go deep enough and long enough, we can really achieve some breakthroughs as they start to integrate these things that happen to them and the stories that have developed. And it's like this rust that accumulates for each of us. But beneath that, there's a diamond. There's an essential self waiting for us to make contact with it. And our symptoms, from my perspective, the psychospiritual, are signals of distress our essential self is giving us so we can make contact with our true self.
Fascinating.
That's what, at the psychospiritual level, that's what any psychological symptom is. If you take this perspective medically, that's what a physical symptom is. If you look at autoimmune conditions, it's the body saying, please love me, please heal me. I've dealt with a lot of people with autoimmune, with MS. You look at their history and what they have endured and the anger and the shame. You say, wow, there is certainly a psychological component to physical illness.
100%. And, I think one of the recent changes to the diabetes guidelines in Australia, for example, was the lack of psychological support many patients with diabetes were getting. And they thought that there was quite a big contribution from psychological issues that come along with the diagnosis of diabetes, the management of diabetes, the regular maintenance and medications and checks that you have to do with diabetes. On top of that, all the complications of diabetes, all the things that can happen to lifelong illness. And that was the most fascinating thing. One of the biggest contributors to mental illness was that people were getting diagnosed with all these conditions in under 10 minutes sometimes after a blood test, and their mental health was being disregarded.
Yeah, and I think, doctors get a bad rap, but you guys are in a system that it's pretty much impossible, right, for you to dedicate that time. So it's like when people complain to the retail staff at a shop at the port. It's like, I feel for the doctors, because even if, and I've worked with a lot of psychiatrists who began with, very well intentioned, and they want to heal and do therapy, but at the end of the day, it was okay. I see 4 patients an hour for 15 minutes, and I give the script, and it's pretty much all I can do. So the paradigm itself, even in psychology, has become very medicalized. Maybe less so in Australia and America, certainly with the insurance system and how they bill, but it's become like that here with psychology and Medicare as well, right? It's like you said, 10 sessions and we'll patch you up and on your way.
Well, the thing is, like, you're setting goals, and then after a set of time, have we achieved these goals? Okay, off you go to the back to where you came from, kind of thing. Start again.
That's right.
And if the same stressors are happening, if the same issues are coming up, if the same lack of self-reflection is happening, the lack of understanding of the self is there. There's no communication between, members and family members and friends and family. It's just going to happen again and again and again.
Right. You haven't dealt with the core issue, the root cause.
So we've talked about personality, and the way you've described it is fascinating. how do you think spirituality comes in
Yeah.
to either the development of a personality or the nurturing of a personality?
Well, I think of spirituality as as that which strips off that rust that has accumulated, right? So if we look at, for example, when we develop a connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I was talking to someone that wasn't Muslim, I'd say to the divine, to higher guidance, the basic personality, which is this mental construct of who I think I am, when we have contact with higher guidance, with the divine, with God Almighty, with the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, with the holy ones, at the mental level, and it might be you get a little glimpse of it. Maybe you go to ziyarah, a maqam, you recite a ziyarah, and in that moment, you're momentarily lifted to an illuminated level where the aql, the mind, even for a little moment, transcends the usual compulsions and neuroses, and you have that clarity. So you have an illuminated mind. And in your heart, rather than it always being tossing and turning and doubting, and again in these neurotic states, the heart, the spiritual, the higher heart, develops serenity, right? And the nafs itself, which is this complex of constructs and neuroses, becomes more tamed. So I think of spirituality as, you could look at it as a technology for healing these psychological wounds and ultimately making us whole, but not in a mechanical way, in a way that we can't really describe. It's synergistic. Yeah.
So if somebody comes to you
Yeah.
and you've identified that this is one of the areas you really want to delve into,
Right.
what's your recipe?
I don't know if I have a recipe. The spiritual part organically comes out. You know, if I'm helping someone with anxiety, for example, and they're worried about all these things and what's going to happen, I mean, ultimately, what is the solution to that is some level of surrender. So that's one way, is that you deal with it organically, but also when you start looking at the personality aspects and the history and maybe where they were wounded and the relationship with mum and dad, as you dissolve those things, the person naturally becomes more spiritually inclined. They start to want to go deeper and turn to the divine, because they're no longer weighed down by the psychological complexes. That's what I was saying before. If we bypass psychology, many of the times we can't achieve an authentic spirituality because our psychological defenses keep us in a pattern. And then we think, is my faith lacking because I'm being spiritual, or I've gone to ziyarah, but these patterns still have a hold on me? Because you haven't done the psychological work, which is the work on the nafs. Imam Ali alayhi salam, we all know when he said, "Man arifa nafsa arifa rabba." Well, that's psychology. What is psychology in Arabic? Ilm al-nafs. Right?
A good segue
Yes.
to get into the personality of Al-Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. Salamullahi alayhi. We probably won't even be able to scratch the surface.
Yes.
But how do you see Al-Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam as maybe a guidance towards what you do, or how do you see that interaction?
I see him as a perfect man, meaning on the human plane, he manifested human perfection. And of course, that doesn't make him divine, which some people may accuse us of. We're not making that claim.
No.
But human perfection, meaning he was perfectly balanced in all areas. So just as an example, he was perfectly courageous in the most perfect form a human could be, without being cruel. Right? Now, sometimes many people can be very courageous or heroic, but they can be also sadistic and cruel. Right? He was perfectly just, and it would never veer into an injustice or being overbearing. So he is al-insan al-kamil, and he, alayhi salam, was the apprentice of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. which is the model that I take in that our psychological and spiritual development requires a master-apprentice relationship. You can only go so far with books, and you need contact with a consciousness greater than yourself. Now, that could be a human. It could be you might be lucky enough to find a therapist that's operating at a high consciousness or a guide. But it also could be your own intercessory relationship with a particular member of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam that takes you and gives you that guidance. Because my understanding is the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam are intimately interested in the affairs of their Shia. They are our living guides.
100%. And the Imam of our time, Ajalallah Ta'ala Fajruhu Sharif, actively, actively looks at and tracks the events and the actions of the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So there is a truthful and a physical realm to that.
Yes.
But at the same time, I've had interactions with quite a lot of members of our community here.
Yes.
Ever since the opportunity has become more prevalent for people to visit the Ahlul Bayt and go on ziyarah and go on the group ventures to visit the Ahlul Bayt salamullah alayhim. First of all, the commentary that I see is when they come back, there is a sense of loss because they miss being there.
Yeah.
But also there is a sense of gain because they've gained something by being there.
Yes.
And so you'll see that they'll have light, or they become more luminous.
Yes.
Yes.
And
that is a subconscious thing, really. It's not a physical thing that you actually see.
yeah.
It's something that you see and feel.
That's right. Yes.
When they come back from ziyarah,
Yes.
or they say Nur ziyarah, And the other thing that I found is that they become, something else opens up, that they become addicted to that type of relationship where they want to go back.
Yeah.
And they want to go back.
Yes.
Every arba'een, they want to go back. Every Rajabiyya, Ziyarah Rajabiyya, they want to go back.
Yes.
What do you think the secret is to that sense of wanting to go back and reliving that, or yearning that psychological awareness?
I think one of the things we could say is that the maqamat themselves, the holy shrines, have such a high vibrational frequency, owing to the grace of the presence of the Imam, alayhi salam, whichever Imam it is, or Holy One, and the prayers, the supplications, that in that physical space you are entering it's a very amplified sacred space, which is very unique. So when they come back, they actually feel a sharp contrast vibrationally. Right? As you enter the maqam, there is a vibrational shift. You're entering sacred space. So it is a ritual, and then you come back to your everyday mundane life. You land back at Sydney Airport, and
Monday to Friday.
You catch the train, or you're the Uber. You open up your bills and your emails, and there is that longing to be back there because of the high vibration. These are sacred spaces, and owing to the grace of the A'imma alayhi salam, the grace of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, the grace of the pure ones, which is what distinguishes our school of thought. It is grace, it's barakah. These are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose and purified and perfected. So they are our role models. We need human guides. Now, at a very miniature level, that could be a coach or a therapist is acting like a guide, and you're in an apprenticeship with him or her. So the human dimension, the relational dimension, is very powerful. So the ziyarah has a vibrational dimension. There's a relational dimension. And actually, it's something that is a treasure that I would say is unique to our school of thought. We are very lucky that we have that. Yes.
It's interesting you bring that up. I want to talk about, so we've talked about your true self.
Your true self.
We've talked about psychology. We've talked about the deeper kind of dimension of exploring oneself, understanding oneself, and then having that relationship with the divine. If we move to the next step, which is transformation, how can one achieve transformation?
Well, I guess everything we've talked about has been under that umbrella term, right? Transformation, because it begins with setting the intention that I want to know the truth about myself. So transformation, there's so many ways we could put it, but here's one way that's easy to digest. Transformation is overcoming pride. What is pride? Pride is, am I willing to overcome or to let go of the preconceived ideas I have about myself? Am I interested in the truth? Which requires me to have courage to confront things about myself that may not be very palatable. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person or I'm evil, but there are certain, let's say, in the model I use, passions or vices or sins, so to speak, that when we confront them in ourselves, it's not good. And, there's a common list that we humans suffer from. Pride, envy, vanity, stinginess, vengeance, cowardice, sloth, laziness. You say, oh, goodness. And the model that I use, we usually sort of major in one of, there's 9 of them. And when you find the one that you major in, it's very confronting. So transformation requires a naked pursuit of the truth above and beyond any preconceived idea I hold. What is the truth? Right? And am I willing to let go of comforting lies that keep me trapped in some sort of captivity, right? Whether it's victimhood or anger or chronic doubt. So transformation requires a decision based on seeking truth, which ultimately comes from love. You have to have enough self-love, self-respect and self-worth to want to transform. I'm worth it. I deserve it. Right? You got to back yourself. What am I here for? I'm on a journey of I'm on a soul journey here. And before I complete the arc of my soul journey, in what condition do I want to go back to God? Do I want to go back as full of complaints and whinging and whining and resentful and God, or do I want to say, hey God, I'm ready? As Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam said at the end of his journey, he said, my Lord, make me die a Muslim. After all that he went through and all of the trials and tribulations and all of the gifts and secret knowledge, his wish was, amitni muslima, let me die a Muslim. So ultimately to transform means to come back to who we truly are. And that requires self-love. You've got to love yourself enough and feel like I'm deserving of that.
It does require there's an element of readiness though. You've got to be ready to take that step.
Exactly, which is why when I start a journey with a client or a patient or however you want to say it, you meet the person where they're at. If someone's been severely traumatized and they're dysregulated and they've got complex PTSD, you don't start with, well, let's start with spiritual transformation. You say, hey, I mean, what's happened to you has fundamentally disconnected you from trusting your own body. So we've got to start there. There are no gimmicks, there are no recipes. Ultimately, transformation requires divine grace. It requires grace, the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tawfiq from Allah, from subhanahu wa ta'ala, from Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. And that we are a willing participant and we say, I want to embark on this for my highest good. And I ask for my highest guidance. And if you do that, you'll start to find the guidance appear. It will appear.
And you do have to ask for it. Like you say in your dua, say, Allahumma rzuqna tawfiq. Allahumma, you have to ask for it.
You got to ask.
Because if you don't ask for it, then it won't fall into place for you. Do you know what I mean? It's very hard to take that first step. We see it in all forms of, let's say, illness.
Yes.
In all form of illness, in all form of addiction, for example.
Yes.
Is to stop an addiction, you have to be ready to stop.
Exactly. You have to let go of pride.
Exactly.
To say, I need help.
And, you could use multiple examples, smoking being a very common thing.
That's right.
When it comes up a lot, I say, would you like to stop? No, I don't think I'm ready yet.
Yeah.
And that readiness is so difficult to reach. Like, what would trigger you to become ready? Would somebody's death, for example, a family member's death, be a trigger for you to become ready? Or a near miss? Would that make you get ready? Or visiting Arba'in and seeing multi-million people turning up to the ziyarah saying, what did this person do? Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam gave everything. And what am I doing? To contribute? What am I doing to learn? What am I doing to...
Yes.
And so that readiness, how, apart from asking for tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how else could we be ready?
Well, I would look at it practically. To be ready, when I'm working with someone that wants to give up an addiction or a habit, the first thing I say is, let's take morality out of it. And that might be controversial in an Islamic podcast. I want you to be selfish. Okay, what's the payoff you're getting from this behavior? You tell me, look, Abid, I'm a glutton. I'm addicted to halal snack packs and Krispy Kremes and Boston Donuts.
Heart attack in a box.
Right, okay. But I must give it up because my doctor, Dr. Qarar told me, and he put his finger out, and the good doctor, and I said, so that's morality. My doctor shamed me. It's not going to work. So I would say to that person, okay, tell me, what's the payoff to you of indulging in this food? It's very pleasurable. You get comfort. So let's not pretend you're not getting massive benefits. You are. Okay. Okay, so what is it that you would want in exchange in order to give that up? Be selfish. For me to give that up, what do I want that would make it worth it? And I have to explore with that person what it is. Is it, I'd like to be slimmer, because if I'm slimmer, I can attract a spouse. Because if I'm slimmer, I respect myself more. Because if I'm slimmer, I'm going to get a bigger salary at work. I don't say to the person, astaghfirullah, you must have a spiritual... Say, excellent, let's work on that. You want to attract a spouse. You want to be in shape. Okay, that's good. So that's the tajara. You're going to trade the pleasure of the donuts for having a better figure. Start there. No, it has to be more lofty, the reason. No, it doesn't. Start there. Then build up to the higher levels. Right? I want people to be practical, not necessarily idealistic. So practically speaking, we only give up an addiction or a compulsion where the payoff has worn out, or we're going to get something better in exchange. Yeah.
Speaking of transformation in general,
Yes.
we've established a few of the cornerstones. We're kind of delving into the process of transformation.
Yes.
Let's say somebody's embarking on that
Yes.
process. How can one reach spiritual and emotional maturity?
Yeah. That's a big topic. I'd say there has to be first of all, a stated intention that you want that, which means I have to give up my prideful positions. I have to give up my grudges and resentments. So there has to be, first of all, a clear intention. Just like someone says has an intention, I want to lose weight. I'm going to start to work out. I'm sick of how I look and feel. So there has to be a clarity of intention. Second is you need to reliably and regularly come into contact with higher consciousness material. So, for example, when you go to ziyarah, that's a high consciousness frequency you're in contact with.
Yeah, because you're missing out on time at work. You're putting out money to pay for the ticket.
Right.
You're spending time away from family. And probably, there's actually, if you said this to a layperson, they'll say, what are you doing? Visiting some, grave somewhere else.
And Iraq, aren't you going to get blown up?
Halfway around the country where the government tells you not to travel to that country.
That's right.
And yet you do it with, tens and millions of other people.
Yes.
When you think about it in the true sense of just the words or the sentences.
The material sense.
The material sense.
Yes.
It kind of doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
But for those that you see quite a lot of, videos of non-Muslims going to Karbala and seeing, and I remember, watching one of them. He said the moment he entered and Bab al-Qibla, Karbala al-Muqaddasa, in front of the maqam of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, you could tell physically there was something.
There was a shift.
There was a shift. And then he couldn't emotionally, he lost it, started crying.
Yeah.
And even now I'm feeling it. When
Of
you are reliving the moment,
course.
you are in front of that, and it's a person who has died 1400 years ago, who's passed away, martyred in the most brutal way, 1400 years ago. And all we know about it is a story written in history books, passed down by people. But the physical reverberations that it has on you, only the person who's felt it can tell you how it feels.
It's a deeply subjective experience. So that's that's a transformational experience. So to transform, we need to be in regular contact with transformational content. Now that could be a teacher, that could be books that transmit high consciousness knowledge. Ultimately,
and just to mature that, to build on it,
yes, exactly. And ultimately, in my experience, it requires a human guide or teacher, and you need to ask for that, for the right teacher to appear. So I've been blessed in my life with very illuminated teachers, mentors, and guides. Alhamdulillah.
Now tell me more.
Well,
who are your guides?
Well, I probably can't reveal their identity, right?
Don't reveal their identity.
No, who are my guides? Well,
just generally,
they haven't always been Muslim, to be honest, in my case. But they've been people with a higher level of awareness that helped me see things that I just could not see. And that's really the core of the malady of the condition of Bani Adam as Islam diagnosed it. It is ghafla. It's not original sin. Christianity diagnosed it as an original sin, meaning your very nature is defective. You are bad. No, Islam says you are walking around with veils. And if those veils come off, then you would not choose to do that.
You'll see the truth.
You'll see it, right? So, and I believe that we're going to be sent the guidance according to what we need at any moment. It could be in the form of a book. It could be a teaching. But ultimately, this is personal experience. The deepest forms of self-transformation require a relationship with another human that gives you guidance. And or, in our school of thought, a intercessory relationship with a member of Ahlul Bayt. And I believe, I don't have any evidence for this in terms of books or scholarship. I'm not an Islamic scholar, that every Shi'i, if he asks, or if he asks for that guidance in his heart, will be guided toward who that person is. Which member of Ahlul Bayt. I know some of the brothers, for example, they have a very intimate relationship with Imam Musa alayhi salam.
Musa bin Ja'far al-Kadhim.
And I just have this deep love for him. For others, it's Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. For many, Sayyidah Zahra alayhi salam. So the intercessory relationship that the individual Shi'i has is a very powerful vehicle for transformation.
Some very thought-provocative discussions.
Yes.
We've delved now into the really deep part of the topic.
Yes.
I want to talk about self-reflection.
No.
Tell me your view of self-reflection, and how do I become a good self-reflector?
Yes. Well, self-reflection is critical. In Arabic, you call it tadabbur. At-tadabbur. And I guess what I would say is contemplation would be maybe another word. Well, first of all, you have to set an intention, is to ask the quality questions. Why do I do what I do? Why am I reacting? Why does this person bug me? Why do I feel this jealousy? So self-reflection, or you can call it the in-depth inquiry process, to inquire. A lot of the times what stops us from doing that is we have this fear that we're going to discover some deep, dark thing about ourselves. And that's going to go against the personality, the mental image or construct. I'm a very generous person, right? I'm baking cookies for people and I'm, taking them to their appointments, and it's like, oh, okay, but what if there's a part of me that has a lot of pride in that? Look how much I help people. They don't value me. How dare they? That's pride, right? The ego, the personality, doesn't want you to see that. So self-reflection is, I want to discover what's actually happening, as if we say, under the hood. But whatever I discover that seems like dark, the beauty from the Islamic perspective, that's not the real you. So don't worry. That's the shell. That's the persona. That's the facsimile. That's the counterfeit. Whereas in the Western tradition, they talk about the shadow and Jung, and which is grounded in more of a Christian conception. Oh, that's who you really are. You're this dark.
You can't do much about it. You just have to live with it.
You're an evil person. No. Islam says, no. You're an innocent person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَقَدْ قَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, we have honored the children of Adam. You have honor. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees our innocence. So tadabbur means I want to inquire, and whatever comes up, if it's something that is confronting to me, it's something I want to look at, because if it confronts me, then the part of me that feels confronted by it, that's the real me. The inner observer, the capital I, not the little tiny I, the ego.
Big I.
The big I. So tadabbur and reflection means, hey, I'm willing to see whatever comes up, because I know it's not who I truly am at my essence. And I want to disidentify with it. That's the other key word, to disidentify. And it's like, oh, yeah, I do have pride. I see myself as a very helpful person, but can I see that I'm helping people that haven't asked for my help? I see myself as a very important person with my titles. And it's like, and I was like that before, Abdul Saad, clinical psychologist. Like, I don't even see myself like that anymore. I genuinely don't even care, right, about that. So you go beyond that, and that's one of the markers of genuine spiritual growth, is you're no longer going by particular identities or titles. You begin, ultimately, you start to see yourself as beyond even your biography, right? Beyond your credentials. So you're not in a way, it's not this sort of false humility of I'm worthless. It's just, I don't identify with that anymore. I'm just Abdul. And in terms of what I do, I listen, I'm here to help, I'm here to give you the best guidance I can. And I'm working on myself in the process. I've said a lot there. Hopefully I haven't gone on a tangent.
No, I think that is really, really important, because there's a lot of times we can get confused.
Yes.
And things kind of go astray in our thought. Like, what am I actually doing this for?
Right.
Like, am I doing it to please my parents? Am I doing it to please my friends?
Yes.
Am I doing it because it's the perceived right thing to do?
Yeah.
Because in front of everybody it looks like it's the right thing to do, so I should do it.
That's it.
Am I doing it because I feel embarrassed not to do it?
Not to do it.
Like, it's actually easier to do it than not to do it.
Just to comply.
Just comply and keep going. Or am I doing it for a greater reason? One of the things we say in your actions, for example, the maraji', the jurisprudence part of our fiqh, the jurisprudence tells us that whatever act that you do, your intention is that you want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qurbatan ila Allah ta'ala.
Exactly.
The moment you make, and essentially, everything we've talked about gets summarized in that one sentence.
Absolutely.
Qurbatan ila Allah ta'ala. Because your intention through what you're doing is to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Correct.
One of the difference, I'll give you an example. One of the differences, for example, in fasting. We are on the verges very soon, in the next few months, on the verge of the month of Ramadan. One of the things about fasting, for example, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أيها الذين آمنوا كتب الصيام على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون كتب عليكم الصيام كما الذي كتب على الذين من قبلكم. That means that there was fasting for other people before us.
Yes,
But
sir.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran said, Kutiba alaykum as-siyam. He didn't say Kutiba alaykum as-sawm.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest difference in that is that as-sawm is the act of fasting.
Right.
You refrain from food and
mechanical.
drinks. You refrain from all of the list of things that you should refrain
Yeah.
from, and you fasted.
Yes, yes.
But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts the condition that it has to be siyam.
Mm.
What's the difference? The siyam is the act of fasting in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept that from you.
Mm-hmm.
But how many people do we see that just fast for the sake of fasting? Because
Yeah.
I'm not wearing a hijab, but I'll fast because it's the thing that you do in Ramadan.
Yes, yes.
I don't respect my fellow friends and family members. I don't respect people on the street, but I'm just going to fast because I'm called a Muslim.
Right.
Do you see what?
I see
There
that.
is a discrepancy in the identity sometimes.
Yes, yes.
When it comes to your
And
true self and
it's
your
true.
intention.
That's true. And I would say, even that, although it's mechanical, there's still virtue in it.
Absolutely.
There's still virtue. Because I
Absolutely.
often tell people, light is light, whether it's the full light of the sun, if I lock you up in a dungeon, which I wouldn't do, brother. But if I did, and there was a tiny little peephole of light, that light is still nur, but it's obscure, but it's still, so they're still there. So we have to meet people where they're at. But you're correct in that you're drawing the distinction between a fear-based or doing something based on groupthink or this is what I have to do. I would say in contrast to it being love-based. And, you know, ultimately what I've come to in my journey so far is there's really only two emotions. There's only love and fear. All of the negative emotions are manifestations of fear. Greed, envy, hatred, vengeance, rage. They're fear-based. And so we want to aim toward it being Qurban Allah Ta'ala, which is out of love. But the part of us that has that nearness is the true self. It can't be the persona.
No.
With
So you
all
have
of
to
its
Peel
identification.
that shell.
Yeah, we have to, in a way, strive to do that. And, you know, that itself can have pitfalls because some people can develop a spiritual arrogance. So basically, whatever level of the video game you graduate to, there's pitfalls. Shaitan still says, all right, okay, how can I get this guy or girl now? And so we're ultimately relying on the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on His grace. Because, yeah, some people reach a level and then they become, it's called guru madness, you know. I'm going to create my own little sort of cult now. Or I've got my followers.
That's right.
Right? So I believe that we need to meet brothers and sisters where they're at and say, hey, even if you're fasting and it's that 30 days of the year, that's still meaningful.
Yes.
It's still meaningful.
Well, it's that first step to either getting ready or thinking about getting ready.
Exactly.
And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants.
Yes.
And potentially one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put Laylatul Qadr
Yes.
in the second half of the month
Yes. Yes.
is to give us the first 15 days to find our feet.
That's right. Could warm up, right?
A bit of a warm up.
Yes.
First 10 days are a bit slow, you know, you're
That's
not getting
right.
there.
That's
You've
right.
started reading the Quran, but it's like, it's tough going, you know. And then it kind of the middle third, gets going. There's the events, there's the things going.
Yes.
And, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, apart from all the medical benefits and
Of
everything else that
course.
comes from it, wants us to become whole human beings.
Yeah.
You know, doesn't want us to get exceptionally good at one thing and then
No.
terrible at everything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To have that balance, and also to see Qurbat Allah Ta'ala nearness to God in everything we do.
Absolutely.
You know, you might be a father and you're getting groceries for your family. Every step you take, it's you're near to God, but set that intention that there's a deeper purpose to everything I do. There's a deeper purpose, and that comes back to a big part of what I teach in coaching is that internal dignity, that siyadat al-nafs, and say, okay, my identity. Why is it that I'm going to be, for example, if I'm a tradesman, I'm going to have pride in my workmanship. I'm going to bill people in an ethical manner. I'm going to deliver excellence because, you know, if I'm the Shia of Ali alayhi salam, I mean, and he's my master and I'm his apprentice. Well, I must strive for excellence in everything I do. And that's a point perhaps to underline is ultimately transformation requires a transformation of our identity. Who am I? We have to change our identity because identity is what nests our behavior. You know, why does the person go to ziyarah? They say, well, obviously their identity is they're Shia. They're a lover of Ahlul Bayt, alayhi salam. That's why they go. They say, oh, but it costs too much. But their identity is they are a Shia. So, or why does this person work out and watch what they eat and they're not going to have, you know, those donuts? It's because their identity is, I'm a healthy person. So I don't do that. I don't need to use willpower. My identity dictates what I do and don't do. Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, living in the times that we live now,
Yes.
there are quite a lot of stressors.
Yes.
How do you see somebody channeling all of that nervous energy that is around? You know, there's quite a lot of, you know, we mentioned depression and anxiety, and it's probably the most common.
Yes.
Anxiety being probably the thing that is driving quite a lot of
huge,
issues. There are multiple financial, non-financial, family, and other stresses. How do you see us practically finding some of the ways to channeling some of that nervous energy?
Well, there's a number of levels that we could look at that. One is at a basic physiological level or physical level, and this comes back to my earlier work with, and this is sort of another topic, but with mineral supplementation and minerals. So that's more the medical or physical side, but a lot of people are just at a physiological level completely burnt out, nutritionally depleted. And especially the major mineral is magnesium. So I believe anyone that has anxiety as a general rule, and hopefully I'm not, saying anything that would be contraindicated, is to seriously consider looking at their magnesium status. We're veering away from the spiritual side.
No, but I think it's important because we've
really
talked about the transformational side.
Yeah.
But there is a physical side that is also important.
You basically
and many
can't
people
transform if you're physiologically in a dysregulated state. It's really hard. So I'd say start at ground zero with your nutrition, with your sleep, and you really have to research these days. There's so many modalities, but mineral supplementation, basic nutrition. I was looking at some research about infrared light therapy, sauna, grounding, body work, getting your step count up, resistance training. You have to find a modality or a therapy or exercise that matches where you're at. If you're very burnt out and you're having like panic attacks and night sweats, I don't recommend you do high intensity training in F45. I mean, you go for a walk, go for a swim, take your magnesium, ground yourself. But there's many, many modalities now. And one that's powerful, that's accessible, is something called EFT, the emotional freedom technique, where you tap on certain acupoints or meridians that activate the vagus nerve and calm you down, right? So that's the biological, physiological. At a psychological level, anxiety is calmed down when we have purpose, mission, and a plan. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? What is it that gives me meaning in my life? And how am I managing the stress of my life, stress is the balance between demands and resources. So there's only two ways we can deal with stress. We either reduce the demands drawing upon us, or we increase our resources to deal with those demands, or a combination of both. So there's some practical things, there's some psychological elements. Ultimately, with anxiety, we will all experience anxiety, but it's recognizing what is it that I'm worried about that is in my control, and have I done everything in my power to deal with that? And then in a way, I then need to surrender. Or is there anxiety because there's unmade decisions, or I'm procrastinating, or there's fears about what I should do, and I'm not doing what I need to do in order to solve certain problems in my life. So at that level, anxiety is a messenger. What's it trying to tell me? At the physiological level, it's a dysregulated nervous system, and maybe my body's missing things. So we have to deal with it at various levels. At the spiritual level, it might be, well, I'm taking my magnesium, I've done all my Atomic Habits, and I've read all the books, and I've done the podcasts, and I've done the CBT, but still there's this anxiety. So then we look at deeper psychospiritual themes or deeper issues. So it's like a multi-layered building.
which is how I would approach it. Coming from a medical side.
Yes.
When I get a patient talking about that, the first thing I do is I rule out the biological cause.
Absolutely,
So
yes.
I'll test for the iron, I'll test for the vitamins, I'll test for the things, and if there is a deficiency, we'll replace it.
Yes.
But the interesting thing is that, in our school of thought, we have quite a lot of self-reflective actions that we do on a daily basis, starting from waking up to prayer in the middle of the early morning to praying 5 times a day to attending the majalis, attending the mosques, attending all of these, extracurricular, so to speak, activities that you do outside of your normal hours.
Yes.
And you're encouraged to bring your kids, and you're encouraged to bring your family, and you're encouraged to contribute to the event and everything else. And, sometimes you compare that to, for example, groups of clients that may not have access to something like that.
Yes.
How much do you think, there is discussion of meditation and mindfulness and self-reflection and in my eyes, that's sometimes overlapping with some of this, deeply spiritual things that we do. You have a mantra, you have 5 minutes to yourself. Well, that's practically when you're praying. Exactly. 5 minutes to yourself. You have a mantra, which is a whole series of things that you say directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What do you see the role of, using that framework in approaching, managing some of that self-reflective kind of me time that a lot of people are yearning?
I think it's critical, and all of those things you mentioned are critical. Obviously, in a therapeutic or a professional sense, you've got to match it to the person and their beliefs. And I steer clear from making it prescriptive. So I wouldn't say to the person, I think you should read this ziyarah or do this. I want to see where they're at and meet them where they're at. And I usually begin with something that's very doable to really set them up for success. So I say, well, what is it that you do that you feel makes you feel spiritual, or if it's a Muslim, gives you khushu'? And I want them to tell me, Tasbih al-Zahra alayhi salam, or there's a particular recitation. I really like Minshawi, and there's a particular surah. I said, okay, well, I want you to make time to do that. So I'm led by them, where we can often, I wouldn't say go wrong, but if we're too prescriptive, and then we're doling it out as like a medication, and then it becomes commodified. This is something deeply subjective. So I might say, hey, this is a dua, this is a ziyarah that I like. For example, for me, I'm very sensitive to the reciter and the tone, and there's certain ones that maybe my wife would listen to and it moves her, but it doesn't move me. And there's one I love to listen to that annoys her. So I just don't like that voice. It's very subjective. So find what works for you, right? The other point I'd say is the whole mindfulness and the Western thing. It's based on the same principle, but it's not grounded in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's grounded as it's yourself. Yeah. It's humanistic in contrast to theistic. Whereas with what we're doing, ultimately it's grounded in God Almighty. It's grounded in the infallibles. Whereas the Western model, it's, in a way, you are the measure of yourself. So just back yourself and trust yourself. Yeah. So that's another difference.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point of difference.
Yes. Yes.
And maybe something to finalize the discussion on. Some of the practical ways you'll find that if somebody's going through a mental health, thought process, crisis, how do you see somebody navigating through the system and getting themselves some help in this day and age, regardless of the age? Yeah.
Well, in Australia, the most common pathway for a member of the public would be obviously to go to your GP, such as yourself, have a discussion, see what, do an assessment. As you said, you might get a blood test done, or you might get a document called a mental health care plan, which is essentially a referral where you would see a psychologist under the Medicare program. Depending on the psychologist, some would bulk bill, so you're not out of pocket. Some would charge a gap.
Unfortunately, that's not happening as often as we would like.
Yes.
But there's been some out-of-pocket expenses associated with that.
Yes. So, and then you usually have 10 sessions that are rebated under Medicare. And usually that's going to be a very structured therapy where you're working on something called cognitive behavior therapy, challenging your thoughts, getting some practical advice and intervention. So that's one pathway. The other would be, there are many resources now in terms of books, a plethora of self-help resources that can help people, often very specific for their condition. If someone's got, let's say, body dysmorphia or health anxiety or panic attacks. What I recommend people do is if you go to Amazon and let's say you type in, panic attacks, and then use the filter to say only the ones with 5-star reviews and or what's on the bestseller list, and have a look and then read the comments and just go with what do the members of the public say, what's actually helping. High quality self-help material written by professionals often has a lot of decades of clinical experience condensed in that. And you can use that as a companion with a therapist and say, hey, I'm working on this, and could you support me through it as I work through this program? Yeah.
Great idea.
Yes. And, that's the traditional approach to seeking sort of psychological help in Australia. Yeah.
And on a final note now,
yes.
What do you see the next, well, let's say, what have you seen as a big change, let's say 10 years ago till now?
Yeah.
And what do you see the next 10 years holding for us as young Muslims living in a Western country, in terms of our mental health?
Well, I'm very optimistic. What I see is the new generation is incredibly high consciousness, very self-aware, focused on social justice. They're highly empathetic. They're highly sensitive to hypocrisy. So I have a lot of hope. And how can I put this tactfully? Might get me into trouble. As the old guard dies out, I have a lot of hope for the future. I think the youth have been underestimated in the coming generations that will bring on the reappearance of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. So what I see is consciousness rising globally. I see a counterbalancing with all the horrors and terrors. The divine balance is consciousness is rising. People are waking up. People are asking questions globally. There's a mass awakening happening. So I have hope. In terms of, you said, what do I see for mental health? Anything specific when you say for mental health?
As in, how has our perception changed from before till now? And what do you think? What do you think the future is holding for?
I think the future's positive. We have a lot more up and coming psychologists in our community.
Which is really what we want. We want our community, our girls, our boys to get out there and get into the profession. There's quite a big need for culturally aware, culturally understanding young psychologists to get out there and help, because there's plenty of work out there.
There's plenty of work.
There's plenty of people that need to talk to people that understands them.
Yep. So I'm optimistic. At the moment, when I started, it was me and maybe 2 others. Now we've got about a dozen Shia psychologists in the community, alhamdulillah. So I'm optimistic. There's higher consciousness, there's higher awareness. And we now need to meet that demand. And we need our institutions and centres to give the youth more of that platform in that space so they can innovate and create programs. Remove the shackles, the constraints. I think we need to be less conservative and more innovative and experimental. So if we do those things and if we have forward planning, I'm very optimistic that this new generation is probably the highest consciousness generation we've seen maybe in history. And I know that sounds odd but aren't there all these things, and isn't there, facade and corruption? But look at the level of awareness. There's a mass awakening. And I see for our community a mass awakening of a return to the deep love and devotional relationship that we as the Shia have with Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and going beyond polemics and dogmas and sectarianism, so that we can truly show the beauty of our school of thought globally. And I think that's happening as well. So my predictions are very optimistic.
Alhamdulillah. Well, I think that is a very, very positive and a beautiful note to end this podcast. Thank you very much, Brother Abdul Saad.
Thank you, Dr. Karat. Thank you
for coming and accepting the invitation to come to us today.
Very enjoyable.
And hopefully I've learnt a lot today. It's been absolutely an invigorating last hour and so. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of an Imam of our time. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.